Today, I am talking with Danielle Caldwell of Danielle Caldwell Events. She is a wedding planner based in New York. Her and I met in Oregon when we both lived there during the time. I'm a wedding videographer. She's a planner. We worked together. We hit it off. She has since moved to New York. I have since moved to Idaho, but we still keep in touch. And if you are looking for a wedding planner in the New York area, hopefully this will be a great introduction to an option for you. Danielle is phenomenal to work with. We're going to interview her so that you can get a chance to get to know her through this video. So let's just jump right into things. Danielle, why don't you tell me about what originally got you into wedding planning in the first place?
So what originally got me in was I was in high school and I loved planning events. I'd actually loved planning events from even as a kid. I come from a huge Italian family and we always are getting together. And then I realized that it could actually be a profession, like actually researching what I wanted to do for college. I actually did want to go to hospitality school, and my parents were like, no, we're not paying for that. But I went to business school, which actually, in retrospect, was great for starting your own company. So, yeah, I did a lot of internships between wedding planning and conference planning all throughout school. And when I came out, I got into conference planning and traveled a ton. But I also did their galas. And then when I got to Oregon, because of my husband, about 4 years later, I became part of a college, Lewis and Clark College, which is actually a gorgeous wedding venue, which I think is how I met you, Craig. I helped them bring back weddings back in 2014, 2015.
Lewis and Clark is one of the most, I don't know if prestigious is the right word to say, like one of the best wedding venues in the Oregon area. The symmetry is all spot on. So it literally goes pool, open grass area, trees, and then the mountain. Everything's in like a perfect straight line. They thought through everything. And I think if you hear like, oh, getting married at college, you probably have connotations of what that is.
So you want me to embellish Lewis and Clark College, basically?
I'm doing it for you. It's amazing. So the fact that you got it up and going again, like if you're a high-end bride getting married in Oregon, Lewis and Clark is on the short list for you.
When I did that, I actually really fell in love with weddings, which is funny because one of the things I told my husband when we were dating was I was going to have my own event planning company one day, being really, really like, oh, that would be so much fun and so easy. But I said I would never do weddings. And then I started working for them and I fell in love with the industry and was planning my own wedding and was like, oh, I don't need any help because, I'm a planner, which I was. And I, in theory, didn't need help for like actually planning it. But as far as like the stress level and like the coordination part of it and not actually working on my wedding day was like a huge disaster.
You being a planner than going to your wedding, I 100% agree with you. And it's a shame when you see couples that don't fully get that and they try to plan it or they put that responsibility on somebody else, and the level of stress that goes up, somebody has to execute for you on the day of. There's so many moving parts.
And that's the thing. I mean, in this industry, there's all different types of couples. Don't get me wrong. I mean, some
Mhm.
people just want that outdoorsy, like low key, hand me a can of beer and like, let's, have fun. And that's great. But then you also have those that are extremely into detail. They have had this vision of their wedding day since they were, old enough to understand what the picture was when they looked at
Mhm.
the magazine. And not that I wanted everything glitz and glamour, but I'm a highly detailed, organized person. And so when I was going into my day, I wanted somebody that I could hand over those details to and be like, you got it? Like, I don't have to think about this twice. Although the wedding venue I had did have an event manager who was great at what she did, she was there for the venue, which,
Mhm.
I mean, that's a whole different conversation that you could get into as far as the differences between an event manager and a wedding planner or even a wedding coordinator.
Let's make that video. An in-house planner versus a wedding planner. Yeah, we'll talk about it. Stay tuned
Yeah.
for that
No,
because
I
that is
mean
a big
it's
deal.
it's a huge deal. And I mean, there's so many event managers I've talked to here, even in New York, that are like, we are not planners, we are not coordinators, we're
Mhm.
here for the client. But anyway, getting back to it, on the day of my wedding, like I knew all the details that had to happen, but I didn't have somebody to be like, here, like just run with it. And so whenever somebody had a question, they came to me and not my planner. Honestly, like it's something that has just never left the back of my brain. And to this day, my mom is still like, see, you didn't need a planner. Like you're an amazing planner. I'm like, no, I did need one, but not for the reasons that you're thinking. But, let's stop bringing up this subject. And it's something that I actually tell clients a lot on my Zoom consultations because it is such a big deal, in all honesty. It doesn't make or break your wedding. I mean, I take that back. It kind of can. You're stressed going into weddings because there's a lot of detail, there's a lot of pressure. You want everything to be perfect, and you don't want to be focusing that on the day of your wedding. You want somebody to focus on that for you so that you can just enjoy the parts that are important, such as the fact that you're getting married and that fact that you just spend a whole lot of money to throw in a great party to celebrate the union of you and your partner. And that's really all you should be concentrating on, which is why we are awesome at what we do. Okay.
Summing it up, even a wedding planner needs a wedding planner on their wedding day.
Yes.
Now jump into Lewis and Clark.
So Lewis and Clark College was awesome to work at. I not only love this people that work there, but as you said, the architecture there, the ambiance, it's not cheap at all. It is also really hard to get into. I mean, they only do 8 weddings a year, I think.
Yep.
And to be honest with you, I totally understand it. It is a cherished venue. It has a lot of history behind it. They want to make sure that it is kept in such a way that is respected. But it also has the most gorgeous views. Talk about coordination. You need to put up some sort of tent just because of rain backup. I mean, there's no backup. If you get a gorgeous day, great. If you get a rainy day, you're still going to have a gorgeous wedding there. You just need, to make sure that you have your backup plans. That entails tons of site visits, coordinating with your vendors, making sure that you've checked every single box. Some people do bring in restrooms. There are restrooms there. It is a walk. It is, in theory, ADA accessible, but you also have to think of the logistics of where you're having your guests walk, because although it's a small campus, in comparison to other campuses, the space that you use for ceremony, cocktail hour, and reception is vast. And so for somebody who, has a hard time getting around, to them, it's going to be very overwhelming. So all of those facets, which is partly why you hire a planner, are super important. Making sure that you have the proper size tent, making sure that, and again, all this stuff costs money, making sure you have tent permits, making sure, your catering staff, that's one of the biggest eye openers. Like, you bring in a caterer and then you actually have to build them a catering kitchen because there's no catering kitchen there.
Let's do this. I feel like you're getting into the second video we're going to make. I'm going to
Sorry,
sum this one up.
Into this
I
stuff.
get it. No. If you're hearing Danielle talk right now, what comes to mind for me is that she's thinking through all the nit and gritty so that a guest can have a good experience. And whether that good experience means they have a close restroom to get to, or they've thought through things, or they've thought through the weather plans or the logistics. She has a lot of background in Lewis and Clark, which is where she started, and there's just not a ton of infrastructure there. And you're building everything from scratch. You're like, where's the catering staff going to be? Last wedding I was there, they're like under their own tent on the side in the yard with very little close access for vehicles and trucks and all this stuff, but they need to be close to the food.
Okay, so one thing I do want to put in here is one of the great things about that experience with Lewis and Clark College, which then turned into me actually starting my own company, because I started a family and needed some sort of balance in my life, if there is such a thing. People come to me a lot, especially wedding planners in general, about outdoor events. And that was one of the greatest gifts that Lewis and Clark gave to me, is tented weddings or just venues in general and things to think about. And you were asking me before about like wedding venues in New York, which again, as I had mentioned to you on an earlier meeting, we met in Oregon. Oregon is gorgeous. Oregon is vast in its own way. Oregon is like a little thing compared to New York. And so when I have people that come to me and say like, hey, I want to get married. I don't know what my budget is. I think we're going to have this many people. Like, can you help me find a venue? And I'm like, okay, here's the thing. New York is expensive. Everybody knows that. New York is also huge. So, I'm on Long Island at this point. I grew up in Westchester. And if anybody knows New York at all, they may know those names. But when you're thinking about where you're getting married in New York, you're thinking about, is it Long Island, like North Fork, Greenport area? Are you going all the way out to Montauk? Are you staying in the Hamptons? Are you staying in like Long Island? Like there is like Oheka Castle on Long Island. There's Chelsea Mansion, gorgeous places. There's also, different catering halls. Then you have Westchester, where you have like Glen Island Harbor Club. And then you have New York City, which I mean is just a place in of itself that has amazing venues, but it's a whole different level of coordination. I actually really don't do a lot of stuff in New York City because it is such a different level of coordination. And you really need to have a specialty in order to work in there, in all honesty. It's huge.
Yeah.
And then you have on top of Westchester, you have the whole Hudson Valley area. And you do have vendors that will literally go all over because they love New York. And especially during that whole pandemic era that everybody loves to forget, outdoors was like the safest thing. It still, in theory, is. And it's also the most beautiful thing. You can transform anything outdoors. But here in New York, which again probably happens in Oregon, I haven't done events in Oregon in about 3 years, but you have venue fees just to have grass. Like
Mhm.
that doesn't include anything. So when people come to me about venues, I say, how many people are you expecting? What is your vibe that you're going for? Are you going for an indoor outdoor? Are you going for purely outdoor? What is your budget? What is your guest count? Because all that stuff will really dictate where we can go. There's certain venues out here that won't even look at you if you're under a certain amount.
I'm going to pause you. You're jumping into the next video. So if you're just like, wow, I need to learn more about this. If you're watching this video, watch our next video. That's how to choose a wedding venue in the New York area. And Danielle's just going to deep dive into that. But I'm going to rope her back in right now, and we're going to talk more about her and her business. And then we'll end this, and we'll direct you to other videos. So tell me real quick, Danielle, you're married. You got two
Two kids,
girls,
two
two kids,
girls.
two girls.
Yeah.
Very lovely. She has been in New York for coming up on 3 years, and is
It's only going to be 2 years.
two, great, and is originally from the area, so she's very familiar with it. To wrap this up and put a bow on it, tell me what do you love most about planning weddings? Like, you're still doing it. You went through the hard work of transferring your business from the West Coast to the East Coast.
hmm
What are you loving about it now after being there for 2 years?
Well, I love New York in general. I mean, I always
Mhm.
joked when I was in Oregon that you can take the girl out of New York, but you can never take New York out of the girl. There's something about New York that grips you, in all honesty. And for me, I think part of it is I know a lot of it is family because,
Yeah.
I come from a huge family and they're all here. And that was, something that was always tugging at my heartstrings the 10 years I was in Oregon, especially after having Sophia and being like, so when are we moving back? And then realizing that that may never happen. And then it did. And I kind of went into shock for a year. Why do I do what I do? Besides the fact that I love my kids. And so it gives me the opportunity to be home with them, which I honestly love dearly. I love working with couples. And I know that sounds such a generic statement, but I don't like planning generic events. And I know that sounds really weird to some people. I love learning about people. And maybe this comes from my psychology background a little bit. I love learning about how people met, what they're about, why their relationship ticks. I love authentic couples. I don't want to hear that they just want all of the glitz and glamour. I mean, that's great. Anybody can do that. I want to know like what their journey is, what they're envisioning and really transform any environment for people to walk into and be like, this is so them. Like we can totally understand like them in this. It's sometimes when I tell this to people, I get like, I don't want it to be my bat mitzvah or bar mitzvah or my sweet 16. And that's not what I'm trying to get at. One of the weddings I did at Lewis and Clark College, the clients had met auditioning for a play. And so their entire ceremony was a screenplay, which was fantastic. They had a love of books. So, we incorporated bookmarks and just old classics into their centerpieces. And her mother and even her fiance got really into making flowers from paper. And they had
Mhm.
created these gorgeous flowers that were hung from rings in the middle of this fairy tent. Like it was fabulous. And so when people walked into that room, they saw everything about Holly and Patrick and what made their relationship tick. Another wedding I just did, they met when they were both in Jerusalem on two totally different reasons. She was studying, he was in the army. They love architecture. They loved design. She really wanted sophisticated. She wanted modern, but just, I mean, modern can be so many things. She had a very clear vision and took us, it was almost like peeling back an onion with her. We had to like figure out what really like was her thing. And we did because we had amazing vendors on our team. And I still talk with those vendors all the time because they were that good. But we actually incorporated Jerusalem stone from like a look, from an architecture, from like a significant point in their life because they met there, into their escort card display. And it was gorgeous. And it wasn't something that was in your face. It was just those little details that really just made it pop. And it became about them. And he actually is a musician. And so he sang and played the song that he wrote from her from the moment that they met. And so like little things like that, that's what I want to know about the client. I want to guide them through it. I don't want to see them stressed about their wedding. I want to see them really excited. Those are the reasons why I do what I do. And I have so many people come and say, we spoke for so long, like you were so patient. I'm so sorry. Like we met so many times. And I'm like, you know what? It's really okay because if you're not stressed, then I'm not stressed because I know that you're in a good place and you're enjoying the process. And nobody wants to look back on their wedding saying, I was completely stressed out. They want to just remember the amazing time of, I got married, I was with my loved ones, we had an amazing party, and it was everything I dreamed of. That's who I want to work with.
That's awesome. Hopefully that was really, I was helped by that. And we've worked together. It was great. So if you are planning a wedding and you're maybe at that stage where you're like, we need a wedding planner and you're weighing the options, definitely check out Danielle Caldwell. What's your website? Is it Danielle Caldwell?
Events. DanielleCaldwellEvents.com. Yep. Great. You can also see a lot of my stuff on Instagram too. So.
And your handle is at Danielle Caldwell Events as well?
It's at Danielle Caldwell Events, LLC.
LLC. Great. Perfect. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can check the description down below and I will link to her website for easy access. Thank you so much, Danielle, and hopefully you guys were helped in watching this.